Good evening, dear learners. Today we shall start with the next unit, next block rather, and this is about classical criticism, what it is. We are going to define. We are going to understand what is classical criticism. Then we'll go over to Plato and Aristotle, Plato's ideas, Plato's philosophy, his concept of different aspects of literature. Then we'll move on to Aristotle also. We'll see what Aristotle has to say about the whole idea of literature and how he is one of the initiators of literary criticisms along with Plato. And then we'll go over to the different styles of poetry. Okay, and it will be followed by some literary compositions like Greek music, musical scales, how emotions and different musical modes they combine to form art that we are going to see. Now, let me first tell you what is classical criticism. Okay, you are going to read here classical criticism. So I'm going to explain what is it all about and what is this classical. Okay, so classical actually means, as I told you, years and years back during BCs when Plato and Aristotle wrote. That period was classical, when we had Greek, high rise of Greek and Roman literature. That was classical period during BCs. Okay, so in those days, what happened was mainly they had drama or poetry, and the two genres were there. And you know, nowadays what we do, suppose we read certain work, and then sometimes we keep it later to make a criticism for it. Our reaction comes a little late, but during those days, reaction of the people was immediately followed by the production. Suppose people saw certain drama, immediately they reacted. So there was no time to think about the response. The response was very immediate. Okay, so that is why the whole production was supposed to be very, what do I say, very alert about the responses of the people. Okay, so and this kind of immediate response created a special aesthetics during those days. Okay, and the aesthetics was mainly between the speaker, the actor, the poet, the singer, and his or her audience. Okay, so the aesthetics developed mutually between the two, between the uh, producer and between the people who received those art. Okay, so in ancient times they had that immediate response because of this, whether it was poetry, whether it was music, whether it was dialogue. Okay, whether it was poetry. Okay, this response was a must. Okay, so that is why you can say this, when when response was very quick and very compulsory, so it required a certain level of emotion. Okay, emotion was taken as primary in all those ancient literary concepts. Okay, and the emotion came from the whole idea of art during those days, because they mainly believed that piece of art or piece of literature is mimesis, is mimetic, means imitation from our surrounding. Okay, it's an inspiration from the surrounding. Now, when you think about great Greek art, okay, uh, that to a very creative art, when you think about some great creative art of from Greek, ancient times, from Greek. Okay, then you will find there are certain concepts which were very different from today. Okay, we moderns have created moderns, or we are postmoderns, we have created lots and lots of concepts. So today our concepts are different from those days. Okay, certain concepts are different. All right. Now, what was the difference that I will tell you first. Now, for the Greeks, those poets or playwrights or dramatists or musicians, so whoever were the artists, they were supposed to they were supposed to have some kind of individual style. Okay. uh, okay, but something should be new and fresh, but those newness, those freshness must have some connection with their tradition. They never disconnected themselves from traditions. Okay, so the ancients like new things, but in continuation of tradition. All right. In continuation of tradition, based on the tradition, they try to establish some new norms. So all these ideas of the artists, they were not welcome if they were very individualistic. Okay, understand? Those the things which were very individualistic, they were not welcomed. They were not liked. Okay, everything that had some connection with tradition, that was accepted and appreciated. So the poet only could only claim that their production was only transmission of art. They transmitted. Okay, they brought from one place and they relate to another place. That's all. So the credit of originality usually went to the muses. The muses are the whole aspect of the universe that inspires us, that brings us the ideas, creative ideas to produce. Okay, so not only here you will see, uh, you know, you the nature helped us to or inspired us uh, to create certain piece of art, but the creation of the artist was just a copy of the world. Whatever happened in the world, it was just a copy. Okay, so hello, Ruchi.
जी
Ruchi, I have already started. Okay.
जी जी
Mm. I have already started, and I was talking about ancient literature, ancient criticism. Okay,
ओके
classical criticism, and here I was discussing that those artists, those who produced literature, they newness was like during those times, but they had to follow certain traditional norms that I was just just teaching. So I'll continue with that. So in those days, they believed that it is the whole universe, aspects of the universe, that helped in the creation of some new work of art. Okay, so the main credit went to the world. Okay, because the world inspires a person. Okay, we are doing nothing. So that was believed in that time. So theories of art at that time uh, was based on the idea that the artist was merely an imitator. He is just imitating. Okay, artist was just imitating. Ruchi, you can mute yourself, because if there are too many
सॉरी
unmuted, no problem. Unmuted connections, then you'll only get fake
ओके
echoes. Okay,
ओके
but still, if you're not able to understand, Ruchi, you can unmute and you can ask me.
जी जी बिल्कुल
ठीक है? इंग्लिश हो रहा है, समझ में आ रहा है?
जी जी
ठीक है, very good. Okay, let me continue. So, we have already discussed in our previous classes, about this greater detail we will analyze later, but we have already discussed little bit of Plato and Aristotle, and keeping this idea of imitation. Okay, how artist imitates from the universe, we have discussed in a previous class, but in our forthcoming classes we'll be discussing more and more broadly about this Plato's idea and Aristotle's idea of imitation. Okay, now another thing that Greeks took very seriously was the ethical value of art. Okay, ethics रहना बहुत ज़रूरी है, morality रहना बहुत ज़रूरी है in a piece of art. This was believed by the Greeks. Okay, so they believed that not only the poet, okay, not only one painter, okay, who imitates the creation of God, okay, he should acknowledge God, okay, for giving us so much of knowledge, so for giving us so much of knowledge, so that we could imitate his given aspects of the world and we can reproduce such beautiful art. So we must acknowledge our production also to God. Okay, so those people in the classical times, they gave a lot of scope for innovation. Okay, but they didn't give much space for experimentation of doubtful things which were doubted during those days, like for example earth is round or flat. So it was a doubt, so they did not give, these artists did not give much space for that. Okay, they did not give much space for these experimental doubts. Okay, they gave space for innovations. You can talk about new aspects of the world, but doubtful things were not liked during those days in art specifically. Okay, so they did not like also much to talk about society. They did not want much to be written about culture in the work of art. Okay, as we are doing now, they did not appreciate that. Okay, now this capacity of art in those days was mainly to please by emotional arousal. Use such emotional words that you would be able to please your audience. That was very specific about the pleasure that you can derive from art. Okay, so the emphasis during those days was not so much on ideology or social reform. They did not talk about that. Okay, now you see, if books are written, they talk a lot about social reform, social changes, social developments nowadays. Even poetry is written on those aspects, but no, during those days they did not take any help from the aspects of social reformation or talking about any ideology. No, they did not speak anything of that type. So poetry and drama, the two genres were in trend in those days. Okay, they had to be written in a very healthy way, and they mainly their job was to give some emotional outlet for the daily tension of people. So if they had daily anxiety, to get some relief from daily anxieties of life, art was created. Okay, and that could stir your emotion. Ruchi, mute yourself please.
No, ma'am.
म्यूट योरसेल्फ, उसको तुम्हारे
Okay.
फोन या जो भी है उसको साइलेंट कर दो क्योंकि आवाज हो रहा है.
ओके, ठीक है मैम।
हाँ,
मैम एक मिनट, ये ना लिटरेरी क्रिटिसिज्म में यूनिट फर्स्ट पढ़ रहे हैं हम लोग।
नहीं, ब्लॉक 2 में है हम लोग.
अच्छा, ब्लॉक 2 में।
ठीक है, ब्लॉक 2 में हम लोग क्लासिकल
20 सेंचुरी।
क्रिटिसिज्म, क्लासिकल क्रिटिसिज्म कर रहे हैं. अभी तुम क्या कर सकते हो, तुम बैठ के ठीक से सुन लो, क्योंकि मैं
जी
ट्राई
जी।
करती हूँ इतना इजी करने जो तुम समझ पाओ इजी
ठीक है,
वर्ड
ठीक
में.
है मैम।
अभी बैठ के सुन लो ठीक से. उसके बाद
ठीक है,
क्या
ठीक।
करना, तुम्हारा जो मटेरियल है पढ़ लेना, तो यूल बी.
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल।
ठीक है.
नहीं, बस टाइटल जानना था उसका,
हाँ,
हेडलाइन की
ये
क्या पढ़ रहे हैं, ताकि
टाइटल
समझ
है.
सकूं।
हाँ, क्लासिकल क्रिटिसिज्म इसका नाम है. ठीक है.
ओके
तो
ओके
फिर वो जो
ओके।
एंशियंट टाइम था, जो ग्रीक लिटरेचर जिस टाइम में बहुत फ्लोरिश कर रहा था, बीसी में, अभी तो एडी है ना, बीसी में जब बहुत फ्लोरिश कर रहा था, उस वक्त लोग कैसे टाइप का लिटरेचर लिखना, पढ़ना और रिस्पॉन्स देना पसंद करते थे. ठीक है, हम लोग वो चीज डिस्कस कर रहे हैं. तो अभी हम लोग देखेंगे कि ये जो क्लासिकल क्रिटिसिज्म बोलते हैं, ये है ही क्या चीज. ठीक, ठीक है. क्लासिकल का मतलब है एंशियंट ग्रीक और रोमन मॉडल्स इन लिटरेचर. ठीक है. जो क्लासिकल एस्पेक्ट्स है, कहाँ का, एंशियंट पुराना ग्रीक और रोमन मॉडल लिटरेचर का, कि आर्ट का. ओके, दैट वाज इन लेटर years, in coming years, that was uh, uh, we based our literature was based from those old literature. Okay, so that we could balance our history. Okay, so that we can have some like regularity with the past, we are trying to get some influence from those writings in our present writings. Okay, तो वो है क्लासिकल टाइम्स. एग्जैक्टली कब था, 8 to 4th century BC जो था, BC. ठीक है, बिफोर क्राइस्ट. जो 8 to 4th century था BC का. हाँ, वो that that is yet to come to the front in the history of human civilization. क्योंकि वो जो टाइम था ना, दैट वाज वेरी वेरी फेमस फॉर द ब्रिलियंस इन लिटरेचर. लिटरेचर में ब्रिलियंट थे वो लोग, फिलोसफी में, विजुअल आर्ट्स में. ओके, they were brilliant, and that is why, due to their brilliance, that age was known as classical age. Okay, usually from 8th to 4th century BC. That era was brilliant for literature and philosophy particularly. So क्लासिक्स क्या है? क्लासिक्स is classic word is something different. Classical is different. When classical age comes, it means ancient Greek and Roman period, which was brilliant in literature and philosophy. लेकिन classics क्या है? Classics का मतलब है when you read those kinds of writings, those kinds of fictions, which are famous and which are read, appreciated year after year after year. तो क्लासिक्स के अंदर क्या आ सकता है? शेक्सपियर आ सकते हैं, जेन ऑस्टिन, थॉमस हार्डी, लियो टॉल्स्टॉय. उसके बाद यू कैन से ब्रॉन्टे सिस्टर्स. सो ऑल ऑफ देम कम टू द क्लासिक्स. जब उनका बुक्स पढ़ते वी रीड, वी we said to have been reading classics. Okay, those books which are relevant to all ages through all times are called classics. Okay, and they have stood the test of time. बहुत relevant है, बहुत universal है. You can connect yourself. It has got a good sense of balance in literature. Okay, so year after year after year, still we read. Those books are called classics. All right. Now, ये जो अर्लीस्ट वर्क था, इन द अर्लीस्ट वर्क ऑफ लिटरेरी थ्योरी जो था, दैट वी वर डूइंग yesterday, day before also we were discussing. Earliest work of literary theory is mainly Aristotle's book called Poetics. Okay, and in his book Poetics he gives a broad and very clear definition of tragedy. Until today, we can apply those rules when we are reading, when we are writing, when we are enacting tragic dramas or any kind of fiction that is related to tragedy. Now, Plato and Aristotle, they were Greek. Okay, Horace and Longinus, they were Roman people. Okay, Plato and Plato was the disciple of Socrates, and Aristotle was the student of Plato. Okay, so these are Greek people. Horace and Longinus, they belong to Rome. Okay, these people, these 4 5 people, they form the basic idea of, or the core idea of, classical criticism in ancient times. Now you should remember that Greek, actually it is Greek, mainly Greek लोगों ने influence किया था Romans को. Okay, because later when you see the later work of Roman writers, you will find that that actually Roman have been inspired by Greeks. Greek को के idea को adapt करके Roman people have written more on classical criticism. The Roman models, they used to write of, about French and German courtly romances. So this shows that Roman people actually followed the trend of Greeks. Okay. So you should note at this stage that though this classical criticism जो word है, it denotes both ancient civilization of Greece and Rome. Remember, ancient civilization सिर्फ Greek का नहीं, लेकिन Rome का भी. Okay, so so from there, the whole idea of art and literature originated, and it spread throughout the world. Now we will see a little bit about Plato, his ideas, and then Aristotle. Now, in that time of in ancient Greece, okay, when you have the schools of philosophy and rhetorics, they used to give theoretical training grounds for young people. Okay, theoretical training दिया जाता था, and for them the interests were not specialized. Okay, जो जो एक्टर्स थे, जो यंग मेन जो ज्वाइन करते थे ट्रेनिंग, थिएट्रिकल ट्रेनिंग, okay, they were not specialized. Okay, actually they applied their knowledge of philosophy and rhetoric to every kind of subject matter. अपना rhetorics का आइडिया, अपना philosophical आइडिया को ये लोगों ने हर सब्जेक्ट मैटर में they tried to use. Okay, so they read rhetoric more than poetries. Okay, rhetorics, they found that rhetoric is actually study of rhythm, diction, figurative languages. Okay, so they tried to read more of that rhythm, diction, figurative languages that comprises of rhetorics. Okay, and the idea behind teaching such kind of rhetorics was to create educated young men who were well trained in the powers of oration. उनका oratory skill को develop करने के लिए they were taught rhetoric. Okay. So in those days, Greek men in classical time, Greek men were trained under two main schools. Okay, first होता है philosophy, second is rhetoric. Okay, so the rhetoricians, those who were rhetoricians, they studied poetry. Okay, or now what you can say that they studied, those who studied rhetorics, they studied literary theory and criticism. ठीक है, जो रेटोरिक पढ़ते थे वो लिटरेरी थ्योरी एंड क्रिटिसिज्म पढ़ते थे. So poesy is actually poesis, poiesis. Poesis actually means literary theory and criticism. Okay. अच्छा, प्लेटो का क्या था? प्लेटो lived from 1429 to 397 BC. Now if you see BC goes backwards. जैसे हमारा AD चलता है 1 2 3 4, लेकिन BC चलता है 4 3 2 1. So Plato was born in 1429 and died in 1397 BC. Okay. So for him, this poiesis, poiesis, or what we call here in English, literary theory or criticism. According to Plato, literary theory or criticism was an imitation, or what he called mimesis, mimesis, mimesis. Okay, so according to Plato, lit, any kind of art is mimesis. Excuse me. So he says that art is actually, excuse me, mimesis. Okay. But he says that this Greek lyric poetry, okay, it has a very small part to play when you see the epic or drama. Lyric poetry is very short. Epic poetry or drama, they are very long. So Plato and Aristotle, they gave a theory about lyric poetry. Okay, they gave theory about tragedy and comedy also. They gave their theory about drama. So, the this term literary theory and criticism for Greek poesy was initiated by Plato and then by Aristotle. So Plato called poesis, as I told you, means imitation, or what we also say is mimesis, because he believed that drama is a reproduction of something that is not really present. Okay, so that is why it is named as dramatization of the reproduction. Something is not present, that is dramatized. So so Plato said that drama is actually the dramatization of the reproduction. Actually what he means is that in play, in a drama or in an epic, what happens is that the poet recreates an experience. Okay, the audience watch that recreated experience. Okay, so they are encouraged to live through that experience as if they are physically within the time and space of that experience. When something is enacted and the audience is watching, okay, so audience is so much enchanted by the drama that the audience feel that they are also experiencing what is shown in the dramatized form. Okay, as if it is their own experience. So, according to Plato, he distinguishes between mimesis and diagenesis. Okay, so according to Plato, mimesis is the speech of a character directly reproduced, whereas he gave another term called diagenesis, Digenesis. So, according to Plato, diagenesis is a narration of doings and sayings where the poet speaks in his own person. Okay, when poet speaks in his own person and he does not try uh, anybody's attention. Okay, he is not trying anybody's attention, but he is speaking of his own self. That is what is diagenesis. Okay, according to Plato. So you, with this kind of distinction, okay, so with this kind of distinction between mimesis and diagenesis, it will be easy to understand that drama is completely mimetic. Okay, but if you see epic, epic is mimetic only when the dialogue is reproduced directly. Okay, if in epic there is dialogue, then that is mimetic, otherwise not. Whereas drama is completely mimetic. Completely things have been imitated in drama. Okay, so you know, so Plato here you can see he is a true believer of the true form of poetry, true form of art actually. He believed in only the most real things. Okay, he did not have much sympathy for these imitative things. Okay, he had a lot of concern for the thing that are real, and he objected to dramatized dialogues. Okay, so such dramatization, according to Plato, encouraged people to live lives other than their own. They will also try to imitate, try to understand this. Now, according to Plato, drama is the imitation from the life, okay, from the world. Now, if this audience are watching, they will also try to imitate whatever is happening in the drama, and they will forget. They will not live their lives. They will try to imitate what is shown in the drama. So, according to Plato, this kind of art is digression, because people will try to imitate what is happening in those dramas. Okay, so here Plato was merely warning people against the danger of uh, just copying anybody's role. Okay, like you can see, our parents are not allowing us to watch TV, or we as parents we are not allowing our children to watch TV because we are afraid that they will try to imitate. Some Superman is jumping from the building, so our children might also imitate and jump. So that might be dangerous. Just hold on for 1 minute. Yes, let me continue. So, like that, Plato was also warning people against the danger of people copying or imitating directly from those dramas. Just like we are scared that our children might blindly follow whatever is shown in the TV. Similarly, Plato was just warning from the danger of people imitating those things which are happening in the dramas of those times. Okay, so Plato was actually not comfortable with the idea of grief that was caused in those scenes. He was not satisfied with the suffering that was displayed in those dramas. Okay, so he says that this is just an enactment, but people can get seriously affected by those kinds of enactments. People were sensitive enough to get affected by those enactments. Okay, so he was a bit against this kind of mimesis. Okay, and the fact was that both drama and epic, they imitated the world. Whatever it seemed, these people followed from the world, and they put it in the action. So for him, the only reality was that of abstraction. Okay, so the poet in his eyes imitated one appearance of the abstraction. Okay, and a play and epic was a derivative of the derivative. Means poet actually took the juice, took the nectar of the world, and he wrote poetry in an emotional way. But drama was not like that. Epic was not like that. Okay, epic was derived from the world. So it was actually, according to Plato, thrice removed from reality. Okay. So, according to Plato, you can consider drama only as an image, not reality. Okay. But if you see those rhetoricians, they never question society on philosophy. Okay. Plato was the first thinker to question society along theoretical lines. Okay. And all this is very clearly if you read his book called Republic. Okay. Now, what happened to Aristotle? Aristotle, as I told you, was the student of Plato. Okay. Aristotle later examined the nature and differentiating qualities of this literary theory and criticism, and he wanted to prove that literary theory and criticism was true. It was serious. It was helpful. But Plato maintained what that was false, that was harmful, and the poet should be, as I told you yesterday also, poet should be exiled from society according to Plato. Whereas Aristotle justified the place of poet in a society. Now, Aristotle was a student of Plato. He lived from 1384 to 1322 BC. Okay. So he actually differed from his teacher, Plato. Okay. So he was more interested in describing and classifying things. Okay, as they were. जैसा है वैसे he wanted to, he liked to describe and classify different things. So though he followed Plato in defining poetry, he followed the idea of mimesis, but he did not completely side away this idea of mimesis, or he was not negative about mimesis. Okay. He regarded mimesis as a natural healthy impulse. He says that no, imitation is natural. Imitating certain thing is quite healthy. There's nothing bad about it. So here you can see Aristotle differed from Plato. Okay, because for Plato, the world was dominated by the model of the biological organism. According to the philosopher Plato, world was dominated by the biological organism. Okay. Sorry. Aristotle believed that this whole world is dominated by biological organisms. So he believed that each living being is striving to realize the ideal. All of us are struggling to know, to realize the ideal. We are struggling to know the true within ourselves. Okay. So, according to Aristotle, please remember this, art initiated nature. Okay. It is the art that initiates nature. So it means that the arts, just like nature, works towards the discovery of the inherent potential. Art, just like nature, is struggling to discover the inherent potential of this world. Okay. So according to Aristotle, this mimesis is not just copying, just like Plato. He did not believe that mimesis is just copying, just imitation. Okay. So when Plato thought that no, this poetry should be cut off from the universe. Okay. So it should, because it is removed from truth. So poetry, when poetry is removed from truth, means it should be removed from universe. But Aristotle did not believe such. Aristotle believed that there is a higher truth for poetry. Okay, poetry contains certain higher truth. And what is the higher truth? That of understanding the secret aspects of different species. Okay, so poetry helps to uncover the underlying secrets of different species. So at this point, it will be helpful if we try to think what Aristotle is actually trying to say. Okay, we have two opposite ideas of Plato and of Aristotle. Okay, different views are there between these two great masters of literary criticism. Okay, so what to do and how to digress these two great philosophers. So actually, you must know that Aristotle's theories, they are related to biological organisms. Okay, he is very much related to biological organisms. Okay, just like species of plants, they have their own distinctive principles of growth. They have their own distinctive features of fulfillment. Okay, so each genre, according to Aristotle, each genre of literature, it suggests that that certain art, certain work of art or fiction, it does not need to live up to tragedy. The ऐसा कोई ज़रूरी नहीं है कि आर्ट में ट्रेजेडी होना ही ज़रूरी है, कॉमेडी होना ज़रूरी है. अकॉर्डिंग टू एरिस्टोटल, ईच genre evolves in itself. Okay, just like each species evolves in itself, in the similar way each genre evolves in itself. So when Aristotle classifies poetry in this manner, actually he's avoiding the judging of all works. He's not judging by the same standards and same methods. He's not just judging. Okay, he's not judging any work of art, but he himself is ending up to considering tragedy when he's in the coming uh, units. You will find Aristotle is actually considering tragedy as the superior most thing, superior to epics and other genres of literature. So while stating that tragedy is superior to epic, actually he is largely guided by another writer called Sophocles. He has written Oedipus Tyrannus. Okay, when Aristotle is so much impressed with tragedy, the tragic genre of writing, he is actually guided by Sophocles' book Oedipus Tyrannus. Okay, and following this Oedipus Tyrannus, Aristotle is actually deriving certain distinction within the genre of tragedy. Okay, tragedy के अंदर में ही he is trying to find certain distinct points. Okay, so Aristotle believed that both tragedy और जो epic लिखा जाता था, they should have unity of action. Okay, which means that unity of action का मतलब क्या है? Various incidents must be so arranged that if any one of them is differently placed or taken away, the effect of wholeness will be seriously disrupted. So, unity of action. So, action should be so much tightly woven in certain genres that if you take one action out, the whole drama will be disturbed. Okay, so they should be tightly woven with each other, all the actions. So that actually means unity of action. So he also said, Aristotle also said that the work of art should be such that it takes into account the capacities and limitations of spectators and the audience. So audience और spectators का जो capacity है, limitation है, that also should be taken in account. Okay, it means that there should be, actually Aristotle gave a very compact theory but very important theory, that the tragedy should follow three unities: unity of action, unity of place, and unity of time. Okay, these are the very important thing, and they became very famous later. These three unities: unity of place, action, and time. Okay, another word that became very prominent, which was a contribution of Aristotle, which was the idea of catharsis. Okay, in Greek it is Katharsis, but in English we say Catharsis. Okay, catharsis means distinctive emotional response. Okay, which should be aroused in the audience. When audiences are watching, that particular emotion which the drama is trying to relay, same emotion the audience should feel. That is called catharsis. Okay, so what will happen when there's pity? That should rise out of fear, and too much fear with pity will be opposed to self-centered fear. So he believed that one evocation of pity charged fear would imply a sense of awe. Okay, AWE, awe. Okay, or something terrible will happen. If the drama is trying to show pity and which is charged with fear, then audience को क्या feel करना है? Awe, AWE, awe. Awe means something terrible might happen to the hero. That kind of emotion should come in the hearts of the spectators. Okay, but if you see Plato completely rejects these ideas. He rejects the poet and poetry. Okay, for his Republic. But Aristotle says that no, these kinds of writings, whatever they are trying to show, whatever they are trying to relay, exactly that has to be felt, understood instinctively by the spectators. Okay, so this evocation of pity and fear is a kind of therapy to the audience. Okay, so that they have the cleansing of their own self. Okay, they can see that no, this is wrong, wrong is happening. So if you do something wrong, wrong will happen to you. So this will be a process of cleansing for the audience. It is important for the society according to Aristotle. Now, Aristotle here also gives a very broad, very clear classification of different types of genres of poetry. Okay, he discusses the nature, he discusses the goals that has to be followed by the poet and also by the reader. Then he talks about the appropriate effect of tragedy. Okay, then he talks about the type of tragic hero, the type of tragic hero who could bring about this kind of tragic effect in the drama. Then he describes the tragic hero in a very lengthy manner in his book called Poetics. Okay, so according to Aristotle, this appropriate tragic hero must be very remarkable for his uh, must be remarkable neither for virtue nor vice. Okay, he must be remarkable neither for justice nor depravity, but he should be a man whose fall will be due to some error or weakness. Okay, it is called hamartia. Hamartia. Hamartia means that no, you cannot judge the hero because of his goodness or because of his badness. You can't judge him because of his sense of justice or not having sense of justice. But you will see this tragic hero, he falls. Okay, he falls due to the errors he creates because of his own weaknesses. Okay, and this is called hamartia. So here Aristotle's theory, if you see, you will see that the status of the character, according to Aristotle, must fit in with the action. Okay, whatever action is giving to the hero, that kind of role should fit in for the tragic hero. Okay, and most importantly, the desired emotional effect should come out, which could be accepted, which can be accumulated by the audience. Okay. Now moving on, we'll see different genres which are very famous in these classical times. One of the most important types of genre was myth. Okay, myth, myth actually is the core idea of all Greek poetry, drama, narrative, prose, and lyric. Myth. What is myth? Myth is mythos in Greek. Myth is called mythos. Mythos. Okay, mythos simply means story. Okay, but what kind of story? That kind of story which is preserved from the very starting of a race. Okay, myth is actually a collective memory of the Greek culture. Okay, it is a memory where where their distant life of ordinary Greek life, huh, that was told and retold. That is myth according to Greek culture. Old story. They were old people, ancient people, but their older days, people who existed in their older times, when their stories are reiterated, that was myth. Okay. So in all cultures there are myths. We have our myths like mythical characters in Ramayana, Mahabharata. Okay. So those to Shakuntala also you can say. So those are the mythical characters that we have that belongs to our culture. Means very ancient old tales. Okay, with their different characters. So in all cultures you will see myths are actually narratives that have been preserved in our racial memories. They are preserved. And how they are preserved? Through ritual enactments. जैसा कि रामलीला होता है तो different mythical characters are being played by different actors. Okay, so these are remembered in terms of ritual enactments on festivals, celebrations, religious days. Okay, they are the representations in sculptures also. Sculpture में painting भी करते हैं हम लोग. हाँ, they are the figures are displayed in pottery, temple walls. You can see our India is rich in that. Hmm. Uh, Different holy objects also. You can see the figures inscribed of our mythical characters. Okay. So in poetry, plays, and music also, if you see literature, these are found. These mythical figures are found. So there are many modern theories about the purpose of myth. Okay, they talk about how culture is preserved through these mythical characters. Okay, so actually all these theories try to look at the history and literature of different countries. Okay, mainly non-European countries like Africa, Native American, Asia. Okay, so usually, myths are the old stories which are time time to time relate from generation to generation. Now, these myths, if you consider from the Greek point of view, then these myths actually they preserve and they transmit with the help of poets, singers, dramatists, players. Okay, or those musicians also. They try to transmit certain Greek old Greek myths. Okay, so sometimes there were people who played musical instruments and they sang songs related to these myths. Okay, now, the study of this kind of myth or what we call mythology, is attempted to be studied from the philosophical point of view in the Greek thoughts. And Greeks actually, time and again, they reiterated these mythical characters in their dramas. Okay. Now, when we see about poetry, in Greek times, there were three styles of poetry. Okay, three styles. So in 5th century BC, if you see, they already had two major styles. One was high style and one was low style. Okay. So Aristotle here also he has also spoken about these styles. He mentioned the virtues of diction. Diction means style. Okay. So full scale idea of these different types of uh, poetry, uh, they, according to Aristotle, these types, two types he spoke about, high style and low style. So they were, very characteristic about their elegance and about their majesty. And this two style that Aristotle spoke, it was there until the people continued and followed it for nearly 500 years. Okay. And even Longinus, I was telling the Roman classical critic, he also supported this in his famous work called Sublime. In his Sublime, he has also supported this type of high and low poetry. Okay, so according to Longinus, this kind of poetry was a purifier of a tradition. Okay, and it certainly had emotional impact, and this cannot be overlooked. That there was certain extent of ornamentation of words, okay, that was appreciated, accepted by Longinus. Okay. And he said that you have to be very careful when you see how much the intensity of emotional impact it has on the readers. Okay. So actually, this, if you talk about the style of poetry, it mainly depended upon who are the audience. Okay, what kind of audience are listening to this poetry, what kind of audience are reading to this kind of poetry. So you will see when we'll read more about Aristotle, you will see that how audience reacted, okay, and how their emotion was captured with the help of this poetry and with their typical style. Okay. Now I'll tell you some of these ideas initiated by Aristotle, because we are still, broadly talking about Aristotle. Now, Aristotle, he was the greatest classifier, okay, of different levels of thinking when you compare to Plato. He had actually introduced many ideas, okay, that ideas and many philosophies which are related to art and literature, and which has a long impact on the readers and also by the producers of literature from for ages to come. So he coined certain words which are very much applicable for different genres of literature, like we have ideas of ideas of metaphysics, politics, rhetoric, and poetics. Okay, so Aristotle was able to classify different levels of thinking. Okay. No, I think my almost time is up, but still, I'll continue until your next teacher comes. Now we shall discuss a bit about more about Plato, and why we will see that how Plato based his kind of thinking with with metaphysics, and he connected metaphysics with the entertainment. Okay, and what Plato has to say about mimesis, I have discussed earlier in my first class about Plato and his ideas of imitation in his book Republic. I think I have already told you also that uh, his view of poetry or poesis and mimesis is imitation. Okay, and how he is a little bit cynical about the about the aspect of poetry. Hmm. Now, when I'm saying that he was a bit cynical, you might think that Plato was enemy of art because he viewed art products of all kind, whether poetry, theater, painting, as inferior copies of ultimate reality. Okay, this is what we have discussed, but you must remember in your mind that Plato's primary aim was not to give any evaluation of aesthetic pleasure. He was not evaluating, he was not judging. Okay, but he was pointing out that representation through art was inferior to the ultimate truth. Try to understand this. He is not degrading art. He is saying that art is there, but art is actually inferior to whatever is there in the nature. Okay, nature में जो है that is higher than the imitation. Obviously, imitation is lower than the original thing. So original is the actual ultimate truth. Art is little inferior because it is imitation. So please remember in mind that he is not negative, and we are not saying that he was completely negative, but he says that that imitation art is imitation, and hence it is inferior to the original truth. Okay, so his idea actually were philosophical. You have to understand this. It was not artistic, whereas Aristotle's ideas were artistic, but Plato's idea was completely philosophical. Okay. So actually, he was a little suspicious of emotional arousal of any kind. Okay. He had doubt. Emotional arousal क्या चीज होता है? And of the use of words made to establish emotional truth to sway audience, he was little bit cynical, suspicious about it. Why should you move somebody's emotion? He was doubtful. Okay, and that is why he was little doubtful about this imitation. Okay, people might take it wrongly, and that might be harmful to the society. That is what he thought. Now we have already discussed whatever we had planned for today. Let me see what else. Okay, Tapas sir, you have joined. So I was waiting for you.
Yes, yes.
Okay, okay. Please continue. I'm leaving for
Okay.
today. We'll join tomorrow, sharp at 6 p.m.
Okay. Thank you.